I'm so honored to be here today with all of you and at LA84. This organization seems incredible. I'm learning more and more about it every day, and I'm so excited to be able to bring this conversation with Miss Val to you. Her book is incredible. We're going to talk all about it. We're going to get right into her life story. You guys know that she's 7-time NCAA, 22-time regional, and 18-time Pac-12 championship winning coach. Truly, truly incredible. And then in her off time, choreographs at SeaWorld? Like, what? Who can say that? Miss Val can say that. And if you call her coach, she's gonna laugh at you, so don't even dare. But give a round of applause for Miss Val. Keep that round of applause going until she sits down, because you're in the presence of a legend. Okay.
Thank you. Do you know what's funny? I'm not making this up, I actually have people say, because I've choreographed the human shows, the summer shows for SeaWorld for 28 years, so like the Cirque type of shows. Yeah. But when I just say I choreograph for SeaWorld, and they know I'm the gymnastics coach, I'm not making this up, they go, oh, you're the one that teaches Shamu how to flip. I thought that! And I'm like, seriously? Yeah, no.
I had all these visions. I was like, dolphins and whales. And, wow, look, she's talented. Wow. Well, I wouldn't put it past you, honestly, with the career that you've had. If you told me you trained dolphins, I mean, you know, you're retiring soon, so that's something you could take up in the spare time that you're gonna have.
5, 6, 7, 8. Get out of there. Flip.
Boom. Well, your background is in dance. For those who don't know, she was a choreographer, a dancer, was not a gymnast, and to lead a gymnastics team to all of these championships without having done one back handspring, I mean, that's just an incredible feat. When you, hey, no problem. When you made the move from being a choreographer and a dancer to joining UCLA and getting the name of, I'm the head coach of this gymnastics team, what type of persona did you have to embody? Because you had never been a gymnast in your life. What did you have to do to kind of act like, okay, this is my job now. This is my new life.
That's a great question, because that was my big first mistake. I was a ballet dancer, and in 1982, UCLA brought me out to be their their choreographer and their dance coach for their gymnastics team. So honestly, I'm 59. The only time I've gone upside down was last year. I did a cartwheel on my 58th birthday, and I didn't even get over. It was so bad. So when I say no gymnastics, but I was the assistant coach and choreographer for 5 years, and then graduated, and I wanted to become a journalist. And the athletic department asked me to be their next head coach. And I literally looked at them and I said, you've got to be kidding. I don't know the first thing about gymnastics. And they said, we've seen how you work with the student athletes. We like how you work with them. You're compassionate, but you're tough. And I trust you'll figure the rest out. And that's all I got. So I did what I thought was smart. And I studied how to be a head coach from other coaches that in my mind were these strong, domineering, unwavering, think Bobby Knight, Pat Summitt. Those were the types of people that I tried to emulate. And I grew up on stage dancing and acting. I could act like a coach. So I did that, and we were horrible. And so the next year I studied harder to be like them. And we did even worse. We didn't even make it to the national championships. And true story, I was on my way to resign, and I was walking through the student store, and I happened upon one of Coach Wooden's books, and it opened up to his definition of success. And I read, as we all know, success is peace of mind, which is a direct result in knowing you've done your best. And at that moment, I had the biggest aha moment of my life, especially for you beautiful young women back there. I had been trying to be somebody else. And in that moment I realized, when you try to be somebody else, you will always be a second-rate them. You will never be as good as that person that you're trying to be like as they are at being themselves. And the worst part about it is it prevents you from becoming a first-rate you and who you were born to be. And so when I had that aha moment, I went back to my office and I thought, what do I bring to the table as a ballet dancer? I knew how to work hard. I knew how to work through pain. I knew what it was like to be in a leotard every day. I knew what it was like to have to go through puberty in a leotard. I knew all that stuff.
It's not fun.
It's not fun. But I also knew how to prepare to be calm and confident when I was on stage. And that, I knew I could teach our student athletes and prepare them for that moment as well, as not better than any other coach in the country. I just had to find people to do everything I didn't know how to do, which was the actual gymnastics part. But that's okay. I figured that out. I got people. And the second part of that equation that has allowed me to have so much success was because I knew nothing, I had to ask a ton of questions. And I have learned that when you coach anybody, especially young women, young men, when you bring them into the equation and you say, how did that feel? Well, you fell off the beam. What were you thinking before you went? Well, it was great. What were you thinking before you did that? How do you feel now? When you bring someone into the equation, they're that much more invested in it. So I think that was the magic formula for all of the stuff that happened afterwards.
Wow. Part of the magic formula that you didn't mention just now, but you called UCLA to tell them, you know, hey, can I have a shot?
I did.
And something that I found that really resonated with me that I think a lot of people can resonate with is the ask.
To ask.
To ask to do something like that. You would not have that opportunity if you didn't ask. How do you teach those girls that you've been, you know, training this whole time? How do you teach them to step up, rise as a woman, ask for what they want, and, you know, turn them into champions? Because I know you don't go in with the formula of, we're going to win this championship. What's your formula?
That's great, and that's a really important part of all this. It's really important to learn how to ask. And it's important to, first of all, inside and internally, to realize that if you feel that you could do something well and you would like a shot at it, as long as you ask with honesty and respect, you should be able to ask anybody anything you want, whenever you want. And I tell our student athletes all the time, you can ask me anything you want, or tell me if you don't like how I'm doing something, as long as you are being honest and respectful. So I can't tell you how many times they come up to me daily and go, well, you told us that I could ask you anything. It's like the 20th question that day. Okay, honey, what is it? But it's true. But when I heard that UCLA needed a dance coach for their gymnastics team, I wanted to go to college. I was 22 years old. I'd not gone to school yet. And there was not one moment that I hesitated picking up that phone and making the call and making the ask. And the reason why there wasn't a moment of hesitation was because I was lucky enough to grow up in a family with parents who did not believe in failure. I did not grow up with this term, fear of failure. And to this day, that word does not exist. It's not like I don't believe it exists. It simply doesn't exist. And I'm going to explain and I'll prove myself right now. Whenever you set a goal to do something and you don't achieve the goal, you take time afterwards to think, what did I do wrong? What did I do that was right? What felt good? What do I need to do better next time? Anytime you have learned something, even no matter how small it is, anytime you have learned something that has taken you just that much closer to that goal, it has been a learning experience. How can a learning experience be failure? It can't. So failure is another F word that some mean-spirited person made up to make us feel badly about ourselves, and I refuse to give it any power. I don't like how far back for I don't like.
Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go, Miss Val? Okay, we're going here. We're going here. We're backing it up. We're backing it up.
No, you don't back up.
Oh, I go forward?
No, you go forward.
Okay, you back it up. You stay there.
I feel better now.
Okay. So we're gonna take failure out of the dictionary. I already made
Out
a phone
of the
call.
dictionary.
It's leaving the dictionary. It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
Your girls, you teach them that mantra. You teach them a multitude of mantras. You actually have your own mantras with each particular girl. Can you describe that to maybe an audience that doesn't know gymnastics that well or doesn't understand, what you need to say to an athlete before they go out and perform? Because you have something specific for each one of those athletes before they go out and nail their routine. How did you come up with those, and how do you see that help them and help them thrive even outside of the gym?
Well, I think there's a few ways to go about coaching and parenting. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two, and there's a whole chapter in the book. Thank you. Cue book. But I think there are a lot of successful coaches that only focus on the X's and O's. They only focus on the game. Our men's volleyball coach, Al Skates, won 19 NCAA championships. He only focused on the X's and O's. I think the best coaches, and I'm not talking about in winning percentages, but the best coaches take the strategy of the game very seriously, but also infuse the human side of it. And so one of my favorite books that I read was Phil Jackson's 11 Rings, and he goes into getting to know each of his players and not just assigning a book for the whole team to read, but a different book per what he felt would help each individual athlete. It's much harder to coach that way. It takes a lot more time and patience to coach and to parent. Getting to know your child and not just infusing on them and imparting on them what you think they should become, but learning what they were born with, the gifts they were born with, and how to help them. And one of my greatest examples of this is Kyla Ross, who was a 2012 Olympic gold medalist. Very, very type A personality. Everything has to be like this. And she, from the time she was little, wanted to go to Stanford. And she was telling reporters she's going to Stanford, Stanford, Stanford. And I'm going, no, you're not, Kyla, you come to UCLA. And it was about 3 months before signing, and I took her to lunch and I said, Kyla, tell me who your 3 best friends are. Because Kyla never slouches, Kyla's like this. Kyla's an engineering major, right? You talk to Kyla and she talks like this. And I says, Kyla, tell me your 3, one of her best friends is Simone Biles. Simone Biles is crazy. Second best friend, Caitlin Ohashi on our team. Caitlin's nuts. Third best friend was someone from high school. I was like, I don't know her. Equally is nuts. I'm like, okay, so you're surrounding yourself, you're needing this other side, these other people, these other dimensions. You're choosing to bring those types of people into your life. And yet you're gonna go onto a team of people just like you. There's nothing wrong with that. They're a great team. They're great young women. It's a great coach. But I believe that you need to come to a place that's going to challenge you to get outside of your comfort zone. So she commits to UCLA, cha-ching, and I think my greatest gift to Kyla Ross is before she goes up on every event, she's so cute. She comes to me and she stands like this. And she's 5'7", so I have to look like this to her. And I say to her, I remind her, Kyla, there's no such thing as perfection. Perfection doesn't exist. The illumination of perfection exists, but no, it doesn't exist. However, we can strive for excellence. So don't get up on the beam and try to be perfect, because then she'll get too tight. Get up to the beam and remind yourself about how grateful you are and how much you love this sport, and enjoy every moment. And she has said that by infusing joy into herself before she gets up on beam, she's enjoying the process more than she ever has, even winning an Olympic gold medal.
something like that for each one of her athletes too, which I'm going to promote the book again. Not getting paid to promote the book, literally just love the book. Like, has something like that for everyone, and it's impressive that you remember exactly how to say it to them, when to say it to them, and when it brings out the best in them. And you not only get them to bring out their skills, but you get them to showcase their personalities, from the hairstyles to the way that they do their floor routines. You turn them almost from a robotic gymnast that can't smile, that needs to perform perfectly, into a free-flowing spirit. Yeah, and what is the premise behind that? How and why do you try and do that to them and not, keep them regimented and robotic? Because that's a style of gymnastics.
Well, my premise comes from the fact that I have a very clear understanding that we are all a gift to this planet. And I want you guys, I don't know if any of you have thought of it back there, you young teenagers that are just in the blooming stages of your life. I'm so excited for you. But I want you to think about the fact that humans have been on Earth for how many billions of years? I don't know. There's never been a human being, there's never been another person like you. And the cool part is there will never be anyone like you. You were born unique with a specific light inside of you. And you were born fueling that light and sharing that light with other people. And so when I look at our student athletes, I'm just so excited because they're all so different. Why would I want to make them the same? And in our sport, they talk about being made into robots. They talk about being stripped of their voices. They're even told not to smile in training, because when you smile, it means you're not focused. Don't cheer and clap for a teammate because you want to beat her. So they come to me, and I'm like, let's etch and sketch all of that. And let's start figuring out who you are, who you want to become, and let's start fueling that fire. And it's really interesting. I love bringing in the girls that have been rebels, the ones that have rebelled, the ones that are like the bad girls. I love bringing them in because as soon as you show them unconditional love and respect, they become your champion like that. And one of the girls on our team, she's a sophomore, Nia Dennis, beautiful African-American athlete that just came in, like she was like this, and she's like, I'm like, you scare me when you look like that. Stand up straight and get your eyes up. And she was self-protective the whole time. And she told me this just yesterday. She said, Miss Val, I'll never forget, it was one of the first weeks I was here, and you told me you liked me. And she said, it meant so much more to me that you liked me than you loved me. And she says, because we love each other all the time. It's kind of like used so flippantly now. She says, but the fact that you liked me, it was like me, you liked the person that I was. And I was like, wow, and I never realized how big of a statement that made to her. Early on in her freshman year, also last year, she wasn't doing very well in school. And she came to me with just tears in her eyes. She says, I'm trying really hard. I'm going to all my classes. I promise you, I'm going to study hall. And I said, Nia, I trust you. I'm not going to check up on you because I trust you. And she went like this. And throughout the whole year, and when you say I have my little something with each of our student athletes before they compete, before she competes all the time, she'll come up to me and look me in the eyes with this big, beautiful smile, and she'll say, thank you for trusting me. I'm like, you're welcome. Go enjoy your performance.
That's really sweet. Something everything you say is going to get a round of applause. Something that we talked about before we got here today was a scandal that happened in gymnastics a couple years ago. It still weighs heavy on this community. how you see the light in your athletes. I know you still see the light in this sport. You personally, how do you feel that this sport can recover from that? And how do you think people should kind of change the tune and find the love and the light again within gymnastics?
I was so proud and impressed watching the impact statements of the victims last year. And the thing that hit me the most was all of them had been abused because of the system, not because of the sport. It wasn't the sport, it was the system. And all of them hadn't spoken up because they had had their voices silenced. And when they started listening to their voices again, then when they started listening to themselves, and a really great part of the book is, in order to really listen to yourself, you have to become silent. And when you rearrange the letters, listen, it spells silence, silent. Isn't that cool? I know. Our sports psychologist told me that. I give him credit in the book, it's okay. But what was so impactful for me watching these impact statements were they were up at that podium, in that courtroom. They looked their abuser in the eye. And while some of them got emotional, they never lost their poise. They never lost their train of thought. They spoke with such clarity and conviction and strength. That is what they learned through sports. That voice is what had been silenced, but it wasn't put out. And once they really started listening to themselves, and then they gave themselves permission, as I started off by saying, by speaking honestly and respectfully, they looked their abuser in the eye and they gave their impact statement. And that little army of women, that massive numbers but small in size, is really what is changing the world of athletics now. They are the ones that have burst the bubble that says no more mean people. You cannot abuse us, children, boys and girls. And I do have a voice and I will speak up. And I was asked to go to DC last year and speak on this topic with the House of Representatives and Senator Feinstein. And everybody wants a quick fix. Everybody wants, how are we going to change the culture? Oh, we're going to implement safe sport. Okay, that'll do it. No, that's a great accountability line, but that's not going to fix it. What's going to fix it, in my most humble yet loud opinion, is education. And we have to educate our parents to reestablish a definition of success for their children. And it's okay if your child doesn't score the most points. It's okay if your child doesn't make the varsity team. It's okay if they don't win a medal. And guess what? They don't have to have a participation medal, because those things are ridiculous. Because you don't need the participation medal, because you feel good about your efforts. You feel good when you can go home at night, like Coach Wooden schooled us, when you can go home every night and have some quiet time and go, I did a good job today. I worked hard, I didn't lie, I was respectful to my teammates, I worked hard. Mainly, I worked hard at the things I don't like to do. I got better in those things. I got 1% better. I had a good day today. I had a successful day. Yes. And when you have a game, if you haven't scored a point or had an assist or whatever, but you can go home and check off all those boxes, heck yeah. You don't need no participation ribbon. You're just flying high and shining bright. And so that education is what we need to start hammering home with our parents and with coaches. And we need to be educated on the importance of emotional, positive talk, on nutrition, on sleep, on all of these things. And you know, I have athletes that come in and they refuse to, they think that when they have a day off, they're being lazy, because that's what they've been told. I'm like, no, 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 no. A day off is active healing. Rest is active healing. It doesn't do you any good if you stay all day in bed and you don't get your body moving and you don't get your laundry done and you don't take care of that day off, but don't ever feel badly for having a day off. Okay, I went off on this tangent. So.
I was just gonna let you go. Oh my goodness. I think a lot of credit goes to Miss Val too, because while you're saying these are the things that would help fix or bring back that spirit to gymnastics, I think more people like you would also help and keep that spirit alive, because you change these girls' lives, especially when something like that so heavy was weighing on them. So,
well,
kudos.
I just feel like so many coaches, their egos, they coach from their ego.
Yep.
And when you coach from your ego, then you disrespect your athletes, then you get snarky, then you think sarcasm is funny. It's not. And I remember being in a hotel last year. I was coming down to have breakfast, and they were probably 10-year-old boys in their soccer uniforms, and they were all getting breakfast as well. And I'm waiting in line, right? Their coach walks up, cuts in line in front of everyone. I'm like, no, a true leader is at the back of the line. You. And then he says to them, and here are these boys, and they're talking to me, right? And he says, good morning, ladies. And I was like, that purely came from his ego. He thought that was funny. Because if he was doing his job, which is coaching young men to go out and be aggressive and play hard and want to get on the team and beat the other team, he wouldn't call them ladies. He'd say, good morning, athletes, good morning, Bruins, good morning, whatever, good morning, champions. It took everything I had not to go up and give him a little Miss Val talk right there.
I know you did. I just picture you thinking, you don't cut Miss Val. No.
I was like, you, come here.
No. I wish you did. Oh boy. A person that you looked up to, that mentored you, that taught you a lot about coaching, that taught you a lot about who you are, John Wooden. Everyone in this room should know who John Wooden is, right? Nod your heads. If you don't, raise your hand. Just don't raise your hand. Yes, you should know who John Wooden is. Can you enlighten this audience of how much he helped shape your vision of coaching, and also gave you a little bit of tough love too, because you'd go to him for advice. Coach Wooden doesn't give advice, by the way. He tried to lead you in the right direction, but tell us about kind of your relationship and what you learned from him during his time.
Well, that was my second big ask. I had been at UCLA 15 years. I had not met Coach Wooden. I married our defensive coordinator, Bobby Field, for football. My husband knew Coach. And so we got married. I said, let's invite Coach Wooden over for dinner. And my husband, who's from the South, so I have to do the Southern accent, says, my love, Coach Wooden has more invitations on his calendar than he can ever accomplish in a day. The last thing he needs is another obligation. And just like I did when I called up UCLA in 1982, asking them if they needed a dance coach, they could have said no, and I wouldn't have taken it personally. So I told my husband, I'm like, he can say no. I'm not gonna take it personally, it's okay. So the next day, he came home, I said, you call Coach? And he goes, my love, I'm not gonna. Okay, 3 weeks straight of me nagging my husband. And the only reason I didn't pick up the phone and make the call was out of respect to my husband, because he's the one that had the relationship. And I knew I could wear him down. So 3 weeks later or so, my husband calls up Coach Wooden and says, Coach, I don't know if you know, but I married our women's gymnastics coach. And Coach Wooden said, I know all about Miss Val. And Bobby said, well, Coach, we would love to invite you over for dinner, but I know how many events you have on your calendar. I know you have more things that you need to do. I know that your calendar is so packed. And Coach Wooden said, Bobby, I don't mean to interrupt, but are you inviting me over for dinner? Or are you giving me all the reasons you don't want me to come? So Coach came to dinner. He was 82, I believe. So we had the blue light special. We had dinner at like 5:30. And at 11:30, he's still telling stories. And so that started a very, very close familial relationship that we had with him literally to the day he died. We were in the hospital with family the day he died. I used to go over to his house all the time and watch when my husband was coaching, watch football with him, and became very close with his daughter. He was a tremendous mentor, and I'm going to tell you one story that was really great, but my relationship with Coach Wooden happened because I wasn't afraid to make the ask. And had he said, honey, I just can't right now, I would have asked him again a little bit later. But it's so important to just never be afraid to respectfully make that ask. Two most important things that happened in my life: coming to UCLA, meeting John Wooden, all because of the ask. And an example of the fact is true, Coach never gave advice, ever gave advice. It was the morning of 9/11, and I was driving to work. I turned on the radio and I heard what happened. And we were supposed to be having our first team meeting that day of the fall. And so what I thought I was going to talk about now is no longer relevant. So I call Coach Wooden and I say, Coach, I got nothing. What am I supposed to say to our student athletes about this horrific event? And he said, honey, just follow your heart. Coach, I'm going to need a little bit more than that because I got nothing. Can you just give me something? Honey, just follow your heart. I'm like, okay, great. So our team shows up and they are very just obviously shocked, distraught, anger, everything. We talked about it a little bit. And then one of our student athletes says, Miss Val, we're supposed to go in the gym and train today. How am I ever supposed to do gymnastics again when there's so much hatred and important things that need our attention more than learning how to flip? It just seems so trivial to go in the gym. And at that moment, I followed my heart and I knew the answer. And the answer was because we get to. We live in a country that allows us as young women to play sports. And every day we go in that gym, we're going to take a moment and give thanks to those people that have preserved that freedom of ours as young women, dressed in leotards, mind you, to play sports. And with that, we're going to give more intention, more appreciation, and bring more light to our everyday training. Had Coach Wooden given me advice on what to say, I probably would have said what he told me to say. But that moment shaped the rest of how I start every day with our student athletes. Every morning, 7:45, we line up. Every morning, we take a moment to give thanks and appreciation for something that we haven't earned, such as simple as you're standing here, you have a strong body and a strong mind. You didn't earn that. You've been blessed with that. And we always finish giving thanks that we live in a country that allows us as women to play sports. I was waiting for that.
Well said. We're going to turn it over to the audience in just a minute to ask some questions. So I want you guys to think of some things that you would like to know from Miss Val. And I wanted to ask one last question before we turn it over to them. You battled breast cancer. You beat breast cancer. You were silent about it while you were battling, except your team knew. And something that you just said when you were talking about telling the girls, you know, we get to be here. You had almost that similar mantra when you were going through this during that year. You said, I get to go to chemo. I get to wake up every day. And you called it the best year of your life after your diagnosis. Can you enlighten us, tell us why that was the best year?
It was the best year of my life because when I got the phone call that I had a very aggressive form of breast cancer, my whole world stopped because the only time I'd been through cancer with somebody in my life was with my mother, who had died about 20 years prior to a very horrible, painful death. So that's what I was gearing myself up for, the battle. And when I hung up the phone, I heard very, very clearly, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And whether you interpret this as cosmic energy or the universe speaking to me, or however you internalize that and translate it, to me personally, it was God speaking to me. And I heard it twice. Be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And I went home and I told my husband about the breast cancer. And then I said, but get this, I heard be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And he said, yeah, it's from the Bible. Well, I was raised Greek Orthodox. The Bible that I was raised with was in Greek. I don't speak ancient Greek. So he says, go look it up. So I went and looked it up. Sure enough, in black and white, in Philippians 4, it says, be anxious for nothing, and then paraphrased, and grateful for all things. I heard this before I ever read it. This was a commandment. And just like every single thing we do in life, everything we do is a choice. I could choose to obey or not. And I chose to obey. I just didn't know how I was going to obey because I just got told I had a potentially fatal disease. And when I went to my oncologist the next day, she said, you've gone from having the worst type of breast cancer to the best type. Because had you gotten diagnosed 10 years ago, we had nothing for you. Today, if you choose to get chemotherapy for a year, and if you choose to have surgery, I know it's going to work. And at that moment, I realized I didn't have to get chemo. I get to get chemo. Because I live at a time that has the chemo, and I live in a country that has the medicine, and I have a job that's going to help me pay for the medicine. I get to go through chemotherapy. So I called it my chemo spa. Because a spa is someplace you go to get better. I was going to get better. And my student athlete said, Miss Val, you don't have to put such a positive spin on this. I said, I'm not. I get to go have chemotherapy shot in my veins. That's going to give me more days. How cool is that? And that switching that word in my mind from have to get to, with everything I do in my life, has changed my life for the better. I don't have to go to work, I get to go to work. I hate to put gas in my car. I don't have to, I get to, because I can afford a car, and I can afford the gas to put in the car. Yay, I get to go put gas in my car. And when you live every moment of your day in gratitude, I get to. The brain is lovely, is an amazing, lovely thing. It cannot think of two opposing thoughts at the same time. You can ping pong back and forth quickly, but you cannot simultaneously be grateful and anxious. I choose gratitude every moment of the day.
I think we can all take a little bit of that into our daily lives. That speaks to everyone, whether you're a coach or a teacher or an athlete yourself or whatnot. That is just beautifully said.
Before we get in the Q&A,
Sure.
I just want to honestly and respectfully give a shout out to you young women back there, the rugby team. It's rare to speak to a group of teenagers where one or two of them aren't on their phones or have their hoodies over them or are just like looking around. And that whole table, are you their coach?
We are.
We are their coach? Every single one of them has been so respectful to us up here with their attention. It's been absolutely inspiring and amazing. You guys are truly, you're going to go into the world and do great things.
Do you guys want to start with the first question? Sure, what's your question? If you could speak up nice and loud, that would be awesome.
Okay, so my question is like, so basically we're all kind of new. Like there's many like freshmen and sophomores and stuff. So we're trying to like be unified, but like we're all trying to work on ourselves. So what do you have to say, like, to us? How can we work on ourselves and work on each other at the same time?
That's a great question. I love that question because our team is very unified, very, very unified. And one reason is because we don't separate freshmen, sophomore, juniors, seniors, coaches. We have team managers that do the laundry, they do, chalk the bars, they do all the grunt work, they move mats. But if they're off doing something and I need to move a mat, I move a mat. And so there's no hierarchy in sport. All there is hard work, respect for the game, respect for your teammates, and always try to be that person that is the most helpful. And we have a perfect example of it. You're probably too young, but when Kobe was here with the Lakers and he was scoring 43 points a game, we weren't winning championships. As soon as Kobe started being a team player and passing the ball and assisting, he scored less points, but the team won championships. Put your head down, work hard, cheer your teammates on, give yourself a pat on the back as well when you do great work. Bring positive energy every single day. Every day, even when you're feeling poopy and pissy. Bring it every day. That's how your team will go like this.
Well said. Anyone else have a question? You, sir.
So,
Oh, from an Olympian, now I'm getting, okay.
Prepare.
Caitlin Ohashi's Perfect 10 last month. It was fantastic. I watched it again and again, not necessarily because it was such beautiful athleticism, but because of her amazing joy. Could you give us some insight as to where that exuding of happiness came from?
Yeah, great question. If you all have 7 minutes in your day, I encourage you to watch the Players Tribune that they did. It's on YouTube on Caitlin Ohashi. It's called I Was Broken. And from the time she was 12 years old to 16, she was the best gymnast in the world. And she was miserable. And so she quit elite gymnastics a year before the Olympic Games and called me up. Like, imagine Caitlin Ohashi, the greatest athlete in the world, calling me up and going, "Hey, Miss Val, it's Caitlin Ohashi." I was like, "Wow, okay." And she says, "I'm done with elite. I want to come to UCLA." Okay. Why? And so I started talking to her and I said, "When was the last time that you just loved doing gymnastics?" And she thought about it and she said, "When I was 11, before I went elite." So she came in as a freshman. She's not even 4'10". She'll say she is. She's not. And she put on the freshman 15. And she could do a little bit of her gymnastics, but not much. And we were in a team meeting with our sports psychologist, and she said, very honestly, very respectfully, "I just don't want to be great again." And a teammate of hers spoke up and said, and explained it, and just said, when Caitlin was great, she was miserable. Why would she want to go back there? Because that's what she associates with being great. So in that moment, I realized I had to earn her trust, that I cared more about her as a human being than as an athlete. And if I could do that, her athleticism would rise. It took a year and a half, and I made a point of whenever we were outside of the gym, I'd have her come to my office, we'd go to lunch, whatever. I never talked about gymnastics. And I started developing her trust. And she started then wanting to come in the gym and wanting to do gymnastics. But I think as important as that is, okay, I work with 18 to 22-year-olds. That's a wonderful time of a young man or woman's life where they start becoming curious and inquisitive. And it was her sophomore year. Okay, now you guys listen, pay attention to this, okay? It was her sophomore year, and I just heard a stat that made me just cringe. That young women are on their phones 8 hours a day. I'm gonna stand up for this one. And men are on their phone, young men are on their phone 6 hours a day. And so I was talking to Caitlin about it. I said, I've heard this stat. Do you think it's true? And she says, yeah, I do. I says, what do you do for 8 hours a day on your phone? Scrolling through social media, comparing ourselves to other people's lives. Okay, all of it's false. Okay? So I said, if you're gonna be on your phone that long, why don't you spend part of that time doing something good and worthwhile? Why don't you start looking up TED Talks? She didn't know what a TED Talk was. Do you guys know what a TED Talk is?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can look up anything you want on a TED Talk. Anything. You can look up what the brain goes through. Like one of my favorites are when you look up what the brain goes through when you're grateful, when you're enumerating your gratitudes. The brain changes. You can look up anything. You can look up science. You can look up anything. Anything. So she came in the next day, and she's supposed to be working on balance beam, but this was more important, and she goes, oh my gosh, I looked up these TED Talks last night, and did you know? And she started talking about the TED Talks that she was gravitating towards had to do with verbal abuse, bullying, body shaming. Why do women in particular stay in abusive relationships? All things that she had been living since she was 12. Through that, she said, I just have all these thoughts. I'm going to put them down. I said, well, why don't you put them down on paper? She started writing poetry. Writing poetry, I said, now you got to share your poetry. Okay, so how are we going to do that? She was a horrible public speaker. Like, she couldn't get through 3 words without giggling. Horrible. I said, well, let's practice. So she would come in. Again, she's not training. She's reading her poetry while she's supposed to be doing things. And she started learning how to recite. Then she went to open mic. And so when she went viral, this is the important thing that I've shared with the rest of our team, because they all want to go viral and be on Good Morning America and Ellen and all that. And I'm like, okay, the way the world works is the universe doesn't open up to you and invite you through it, and then you get to say, oh, give me time to prepare. Doesn't work like that. You prepare, and you prepare, and you prepare. And she has been writing poetry, learning to recite it, going to open mic, doing all of this for over 2 years now. All of a sudden, she goes viral. And when she gets invited to all of these TV talk shows. And so we're telling the producers, you can show a great athlete on Good Morning America, or you can show a 3-dimensional human being. Talk about her joy that she had with the perfect 10, but also let her recite some poetry. And without hesitation, because she had prepared, she's been reciting poetry on Access Hollywood, on NBC, on Steve Harvey, on every place she's been. She's now using that platform for good. And she talks about the fact that since she's become a whole human being, that's what she feels being on the floor. That's what you see in her viral video. You don't see perfect gymnastics. You don't see a perfect 10 because there's no such thing as perfection. You see confidence and joy that she got and she honed through sport. That's it.
Do we have time for one more question or no? Okay.
God love you.
If someone didn't ask it, I was going to.
I'm retiring because I love life so much. And there's so much I want to do in life. I don't need to win another championship to feel that I've had a successful career. I have learned everything that I can learn by being the head coach of UCLA Gymnastics. And so now I do a lot of speaking engagements. I love sharing this message with people. When they ask me to speak to kids, I say, I'll do that if you let, but I want the parents there. I love talking to parents and going all Miss Val on them. Just about, we have got to change our culture, our definition of success. We have got to be able to allow our children to feel successful when they're not standing at the top of the podium, when they haven't got the perfect SAT or gotten to that college that you want them to get into. It's okay. All right? Get your ego out of it, parents. It's okay. So I'm excited about that. I am very close to developing and producing an urban nutcracker because I want to bring the street athletics to the classics. I'm hopefully producing a stage show about the environment called Trash, which is like, let's wake up and start taking care of this beautiful planet that we've been on and stop trashing it. I'm hell-bent on getting a course on John Wooden at UCLA. I got a lot to do.
Are you sure you're retiring?
I'm not going to sit on the couch and eat bonbons and watch soap operas. I am going 100 miles an hour, and it's all, like people say to me, you work so much. I said, I don't think I've ever worked a day in my life. I love it.